Welcome to Britain Township Zoning Hearing Board. My name is Kathy Basili. I'm going to be chairing tonight. Our normal chair, Chuck, could not be here, so I am taking his place for the evening. I'd just like to introduce some of our members up here. To my right is our solicitor, TJ Walsh. To his right is our Director of Planning and Zoning, David Conroy. To my left is member Scott Fisher, and to his left is Ryan Watts. All interested parties this evening will have an opportunity to be heard. All testimony must be given under oath. Only the facts and testimony presented to the board as part of the zoning hearing board process may be considered. No information submitted after the close of this hearing will be considered. I also believe that we are being recorded this evening through our website.
And broadcast.
And broadcast, yeah. Okay. We need to say that. Oh, I'm sorry. And our court reporter is Rose Schwam this evening. So we just ask kindly if you can speak clearly so that she can get everything down. Okay, can I have our zoning officer read our first application, which is 207 Julie Road? I believe they're already up front.
The application of William and Joe McNanny for the property located at 207 Julie Road in Britain Township, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, identified as tax map parcels number 26-28 and 26-28-17-1. The property is located in the RR Suburban Residential Zoning District. The property is improved with a single family dwelling developed as part of a cluster subdivision use B2. The applicants propose a residential storage shed, accessory use H2 in the rear yard. The applicants seek variances from section 27-902.C.3 of the new Britain Township zoning ordinance to permit a rear yard setback of 0 feet, side yard setback 5 feet, where the required minimum setbacks 5 feet and 15 feet respectively.
Okay, thank you. And then I'm going to have our solicitor read our board exhibits and go over party status, which we might not have to because it doesn't look like. Is there anyone here in the audience that is here for any application other than their own application? No? Okay, so we can skip that, and then we'll have, before we start, we'll have our court reporter swear in our first applicant.
The first 14 exhibits I'm going to pass over because those were introduced when the hearing was first opened. On September 21st, this matter was continued then, and we have the following exhibits B15 through 22. B15 is revised Exhibit A, which amended the zoning hearing board application. Exhibit B16 is a revised Exhibit B. B17 is a letter of the intelligencer. Exhibit B18 is the public notice that was just read into the record. Exhibit B19 is proof that notice was published in the October 5th and October 12th, 2023 editions of the Intelligencer. Exhibit B20 is a letter of the applicants providing the notice of this hearing. Exhibit B21 is an affidavit of mailing. That notice of this hearing was mailed to the property owners within 500 feet of the property. That notice was mailed on October 10th, 2023 by David Conroy, Township Director of Planning and Zoning. Lastly, Exhibit B22 is an affidavit of posting. The notice of this hearing was posted on the property on October 12th, 2023 by David Conroy, 9:30 a.m. and it together with a photo of the notice that was posted. And as the chair indicated, the only people in the audience are either the applicants or their representatives. There is no one from the public here and no one seeking any kind of party status or other public participation. So we will proceed right to the testimony of the witnesses.
Okay. I'm guessing that you are not Mr. and Mrs. McNanny.
No, well, I'm Mr. McNanny, but
Oh, you are?
Mr. and Mrs. McNanny's son.
Oh, okay, very good.
That's Junior.
All right. Would you like to be sworn in?
I'll leave it up to
Or are you going to be testifying on behalf of your parents?
I really just
You prepared the plan.
I prepared the plan.
Then you are.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so our court reporter will swear you in.
Okay.
You swear to give me the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. State your name.
William R. McNanny. Okay. I'm here tonight, as I mentioned, my parents, Joe and Joel McNanny. I have prepared two plans which show the location of the proposed shed. So it's pretty straightforward. The shed would be a setback 0 feet from the rear property line. The requirement is 5 feet, and the proposed side yard setback is 5 feet, with the requirement is 15 feet. So from the rear yard, the adjoining property owner is actually my parents. There is a lot A, which is an open space lot, which that shed would back up to. And then behind that is Park Avenue, State Road. The side yard setback proposed to go from 15 feet to 5 feet is adjacent to the neighbor to the right, sorry. So that is land owned by Matthew and Megan Montagna. They wrote a letter in support, and I believe that is one of the exhibits that TJ mentioned.
It's part of the township files, what you submitted originally, yes?
Yeah, it was a follow-up.
Then we have it.
So that's it. That's what is proposed, and that I'll close my testimony with that.
I have a question. Is there a fence that goes all the way around the back of the property?
Yeah, so there's a fence that runs along the back property line, and that has two 45-degree angles on either end. And behind that is a row of mature arborvitaes that probably about 50 years now, about 40 years old.
Oh, so there's not a fence on the side yard in the backyard?
It's a neighbor's fence. It's not my parents' fence.
Okay.
It's a neighbor's fence. My parents' fence just is along the back and comes on a 45.
But that's on the property line of the A lot. It's not in the A lot.
Well, that is in the A lot because that is permitted in the A lot offense.
Okay,
They have a permit for it.
I get that. Yes. Okay. The shed being placed that close to the side lot line, it looks like there's a swale that goes through your parents' backyard.
It's a drainage pattern, I call it. So being a civil engineer, I guess I felt the need to show that. But it's not really there's no easement or anything around it. It's just the path of the water.
But you wouldn't want the shed in the path, would you?
That's correct. That's why we have show the shed where it is.
So it has to be that close to the side lot line because of that drainage pattern.
That's correct.
Okay.
Question? I think there's another one.
What's to prevent you, Mr. McNanny, to move the shed, I guess I would say forward, closer to the dwelling?
So I don't have a good photo.
Right,
here
it's kind of hard to say
of
that.
that, but as it is now, and solicitor mentioned this originally, the desire of my parents is to have that shed in the backyard, closer to the fence, closer to the arborvitaes. If you were to look at their backyard, you would say, well, this is their property and it makes sense to put it back there. As it is, they've made a concession to move it up forward in front of that A lot or open space. So it's kind of, I wouldn't say right in the middle of the yard where it is. However, it's probably a good 2/3 up. So really making a concession to, at least from their perspective of having a backyard, putting a shed in the back of their lot like most people would, to move it up a little further.
And your proposal still is 8 foot by 10 foot shed?
Correct. So they reduced the size from the original application again to and make it work on that side a little better.
Do any of your neighbors have sheds?
I believe both neighbors do, that's correct. Kind of see it on aerial, so I think next to the 5 foot marker. It's the one to the north, and then
Yeah, it's,
the other side, it's kind of in between the pool and where I picked.
And it would be in a similar location as the neighbors. It appears to look like in your aerial photo that you provided as an exhibit A.
That's correct.
so the resolution on the aerial is kind of tough to see. but
Mhm.
You have anything further?
No,
Mr. Senior McNanny or Ms. McNanny, you have anything to add? Okay,
Okay, I think we're just gonna go off the record for a moment. Go back on the record.
I'll make a motion to grant the variance that's requested to permit the 5 foot side yard setback, or at least 15 feet is required, and a 0 foot yard setback, or at least 5 foot is required.
I'd second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
all right. You'll get a written decision within 45 days of today, and thank you for coming. Good luck with your project.
thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
All right. Yeah. Hi, welcome. I'm going to have our zoning officer read the legal notice, then we're gonna do the same thing and put exhibits on, and then I'll have you all sworn in and get your names.
The application of Triple Net Investments, LXXXV LLC, RCM Properties IX LLC, and the New Britain Corporate Center Business Community Owners Association Inc. For the properties located at or near the intersection of Manor Drive and Andres Drive, New Britain Township, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Identified as tax map parcel numbers 26-5-49-13. 26-5-49-14 and 26-5-49-18. The properties are located in the C3 Commercial Zoning District. The applicants proposed 2 new non-residential buildings on the properties. One new building will contain medical office uses, use I1. The other new building will operate a nursing home use C2. The applicants seek variances from the following sections of the Newbury Township zoning ordinance. From section 27-1401 to permit the nursing home use, UC2, where such use is not permitted in the C3 zoning district. B, from section 27-2901.c to allow less than the minimum required off-street parking spaces on the properties that the proposed nursing home use. 333 spaces are required, 245 spaces are proposed. And C, from section 27-2901.k to allow less than the minimum required off-street parking spaces on the properties for the proposed medical office uses. 175 spaces are required, 110 spaces are proposed.
Am I good?
Oh, yes.
The board exhibits are as follows. Exhibit B1 is the zoning hearing board application. Included with the application was an addendum outlining the relief requested, 2 separate deeds for the properties that are subject to the application, and a map and list of surrounding property owners. Exhibit B2 is the amended plan. It's designated as the community plat plan. Exhibit B3 are the zoning plans. They are 3 sheets prepared by Bowler Engineering dated September 5th, 2023. Exhibit B4 is a letter to the intelligencer. Exhibit B5 is the public notice that was just read into the record. Exhibit B6 is proof that that notice was published in the October 5th and October 12th, 2023 editions of the intelligencer. Exhibit B7 is a letter to the applicant's attorney providing the applicant notice of this hearing. Exhibit B8 is the township list and map of property owners of record that are within 500 feet of the properties that are the subject to the application. Exhibit B9 is an affidavit of mailing that notice of this hearing was mailed to the property owners listed on Exhibit B8. That notice was mailed on October 10th, 2023 by David Conroy. Exhibit B10 is an affidavit of posting that notice of this hearing was posted on the properties. That notice was posted on October 12th, 2023 by David Conroy at 11:47 a.m. With that affidavit is a picture of the notice posted on the property. Lastly, Exhibit B11 is the Bucks County floodplain viewer aerial and map of the property. Like the first hearing, the only people in the room are the applicant, their witnesses, their attorney, and the board members, and everybody else on the dais. There is no one from the public, so we will be able to skip the party status, public participation speech. Proceed right to the riveting testimony.
Well, let's get you sworn in.
Good evening, thank you. I'm Ed Murphy. I represent the applicant. 3 potential witnesses this evening. With your permission, swear them all in at once. My immediate left is Sherry Doyle, who is Director of Entitlements for the applicant. Sherry's left is Mark Roth, traffic engineer from McMahon, one of our consultants, and to Mark's left is Jim Chartman from Bowler Engineering, the project engineer who prepared plans, which are part of the application.
Please put your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Could you please just spell your names for the record and we speak one thing and start, just don't speak one at a time.
Sherry, Cheri, Doyle, Doyle.
Mark with a K, Roth, ROTH.
GEORGE HARTMAN. With the board's indulgence, may I sort of do an overview of what we're doing here, maybe to help speed things along?
Please.
And the application does make reference to the fact that prior to our formal submission of the application that's in front of this board tonight, we've had multiple public discussions with staff and with the other boards and commissions in the township about what would be an appropriate use for the last remaining lots within the New Britain Corporate Center. And we, the applicant, bought the last 2 lots from Berwyn almost 2 years ago next month. It's lots 3 and 4. The application tonight deals with lot 4. Lot 4 is, as you will see from some of the exhibits, an unusually configured parcel that's over 28 acres. And at present, It includes what we know as the Weber building, a vacant multi-story building that exists today and a large parking field in front of it. That is the principal improvement to date on lot 4. We are proposing, or during our public discussions and staff meetings with the township, we depicted on a plan, which we will show you, a compliant warehouse of approximately 60,000 square feet with associated parking, a by right use, if you will. When we talked to the township about it, they suggested, do you have any other alternate uses that might be more compatible with the surrounding area and how the corporate center has evolved over time? And so we did then propose an iteration of the plan that ultimately is in front of you, and that is for an assisted living facility, which we'll talk more about shortly. It was that plan, and Mr. Conroy was part of those conversations as they matured through the year, and it was that plan that seemed to meet with most favor when we concluded the conversations, and that is the plan that we pursued. Before we submitted it, we submitted the plan so that we could vet the scope of the zoning relief that would be required, so that we didn't make an application and only to find out later that we didn't cover everything. So what's in front of you is a plan that contemplates, in lieu of a by right conditional or by right warehouse type of use, an assisted living facility with associated parking. And to the north of it, on an already existing area designed for it, a medical office building, which is a permitted use. So we're not here to talk about the medical office building use. We're here to talk about the parking available for that medical office use and seeking a reduction in that parking. We're here to talk about whether you think the C2 use of the senior living facility or assisted living facility would be an appropriate use in a C3 district. And finally, talking about the parking available for the assisted living facility, recognizing that there is literally a sea of parking that's out there today. And if anything, the township has encouraged us to work with the various boards and commissions as we move through the process, if we do, to try to further reduce the level of impervious surface, both what's out there now and going forward, because it's way, way, way too much in our view. And I think what you're going to hear from Mr. Roth is that the combination of uses that we're presenting don't justify the amount of parking your ordinance would otherwise require. And I'm not sure justifies the amount of parking that's out there today already, but we can talk about that going forward. So those are the three prongs of relief that we're here tonight to discuss. And I thought it might be most appropriate if we start with Mr. Hartman, have him qualified, and then have George walk through the plans that I just alluded to in my summary of the nature of the application. George, you've already been sworn. Why don't you identify yourself, your professional background, for the benefit of the board?
Sure. George Hartman, I'm a senior project manager with Bowler Engineering, licensed engineer in Pennsylvania, New Jersey.
How long have you been practicing engineering?
Been doing it for almost 20 years. I've been sworn in as an expert witness in dozens of municipalities.
And are you the person that prepared the plans that are going to discuss this evening?
Yes.
Okay. So you're intimately familiar with the site. You're familiar with the summary that I provided, correct?
Yes, I am.
Did my summary accurately state where we've been for the last year and where we are tonight?
It did. Yes.
Okay. Anybody have any objection to having Mr. Hartman qualified as a civil engineer authorized to?
No, he'll be received.
Thank you. I know you've prepared a number of different exhibits associated with the application, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's talk first about my comment about the proposed potential by right use of this property. So, and we can mark that as PJ exhibit A1.
What is the bottom? I can't read it.
It's the warehouse plan.
Oh, well, all right. No, that's gotta be A1. Yeah, that's not enough.
Okay, so we'll mark, George as exhibit A1, plan prepared by your office. And I can't see that for what that legend says.
It's just called.
It is a concept plan, dated 2/23/23, originally prepared December 16th, 21, correct?
The original date is November 24th, 21.
Okay. Oh, I see, right, and the last revision date is 2/23/20.
Correct.
Okay, describe to the board what that plan represents, both in terms of my reference earlier to the Weber building, what's existing out there today, and what you would propose by virtue of exhibit A1.
Sure, so this is a portion of lot 4. You're not seeing the entire lot 4. To the bottom of the plan is the existing A. Weber office. In the center of the plan, this rectangle that's shaded in gray was the 60,000 square foot warehouse building that had been completed previous. So that's
And
what this-
out there, I made reference to the fact that that was a compliant plan, correct?
yes, correct.
All right, and in terms of the area between the A. Weber building at the bottom of the plan and where the warehouse is located, that is existing, mostly existing park.
Yeah, I mean, actually, all the parking in between the existing building and where this warehouse is shown is, it's all existing parking that's out there today.
Right. Okay. The 60,000 square foot building contemplated a typical warehouse use with loading docks in the rear, correct?
Right, there's 20 loading spaces shown on the rear.
Okay. And that plan was compliant in terms of parking and all the other ordinance mandated requirements, correct?
Yes,
Correct. And you heard me say that that plan was one of several that we presented to the township staff and boards and commissions earlier this year that talked about the merit, right?
yes,
Okay. And ultimately, the recommendation we received was to pursue an alternate plan, right?
correct.
All right, would you describe to the board the nature of that alternate plan? Now, we're gonna mark that as exhibit A2.
That looks like it's sheet 1 of the,
Right, this is sheet 1 of the zoning plans.
That you submitted, so it's,
we'll separately mark it individually as A2, just sheet 1. Is that fine?
okay. And highlight if it's different, George, from the plan that was included in the plan set.
No, it's exactly the same.
Okay. Explain what A2 is, the sheet of the already submitted.
Yeah, so this plan shows the entirety of lot 4 on the right-hand side of the plan is 28 plus or minus acres for lot 4. Towards the bottom of the page is existing A. Weber building, parking field in front of that. In the middle of the plan is the proposed senior living facility. Behind that is our proposed medical office buildings, and there is also an existing medical office building adjacent to the proposed. And there's existing parking that is surrounding the existing medical.
Okay, the assisted living facility is designed, and I know we have elevations there with the board about that, but just describe generally, it's how many rooms, how many beds?
So it's 169 units. That would consist of combination of independent living, assisted living, and memory care. So 169 units and 190 beds,
Okay,
3-story.
okay. And you're obviously well familiar with what the current zoning ordinance would require for to park a facility like that based on the size and number that you just described, right?
Yes,
Okay, and I know we'll talk with Mr. Roth about that, but suffice to say that the plan that we have prepared does not provide the total number of parking spaces for that use that the ordinance would otherwise require for that use, right?
correct. The zoning ordinance requires 1.75 spaces per bed, so 1.75 times 190 beds. The requirement would be 350 spaces. We have accommodated 245 spaces.
And can you explain to the board how you made that accommodation and how you allocated those spaces against the existing spaces in front of the A. Weber building?
Well, in terms of where they're located,
Yeah, and the number, right?
well, yeah, and I have another visual that would help a little bit with that.
Well, this is a plan that I don't believe is part of the plan set that was submitted with the.
It is not.
Right, so we'll mark this one as exhibit A4, TJ. You have 3 sheets already.
Well, all right, what does it say on the bottom there? Zoning plan in the legend, zoning plan what?
Or the colored portion that's added to it.
So is it just a rendered version of second sheet?
It is.
All right, so let's call it A3, is what we're up to. And rendered version of second sheet of exhibit, whatever the original
All
plan.
right, that's fine. George, I see 2 different colors with highlighted number of parking spaces. Explain why you allocated spaces to different colors and what that represents.
So on the bottom portion, there's some green shading, which represents 296 parking spaces that are all existing. Those are the parking spaces that are allocated for the existing office building. And that complies with the parking requirement for the office building.
So we're not, by creating what we're proposing, we are not creating any new non-conformities associated with the A. Weber building and the parking required to service that in strict accordance with the.
Correct.
Okay.
So then above that, in this sort of orange shading shows, parking field in front of the building, and there's a portion that's on the right-hand side of the building, which represents 245 spaces, but this is allocated to the proposed student living facility.
Okay, and that represents the second variance in the 3 that we have selected. First variance is to the use itself to allow an assisted living facility use in this particular zoning district, which it is otherwise not permitted.
Correct.
And secondly, to allow 245 spaces to service the proposed assisted living facility.
Correct.
Okay. Do we have elevations that we can share with the board of what this facility is?
One elevation.
Okay, you indicated earlier it was a 3-story facility, correct?
Correct.
And the access or the portico share that would be the entrance to the building faces that parking lot that at the other end of which is the vacant A. Weber, right?
Correct.
Perhaps, Ms. Doyle, while that plan is on the board, why don't you describe a little bit first, tell us a little bit about your background and your position with the applicant, and then explain the thought process behind the assisted living facility, right?
I'm a former nursing home and assisted living administrator, and I came into development about 15 years ago, developing senior housing for various clients. And this represents a combination of independent assisted living and memory care. So it's the prototype that most senior housing operators use in order to get a continuum of care. So the idea is that you come in as independent, you move through into memory care or assisted living when your needs become more medical. So there's not really one in this area that's similar to this, so I think it's a product that's definitely needed. Bucks.
You mean within one building?
I'm sorry,
You mean within one building?
yes,
Is this is kind of like well, I was gonna say Pine Run, but it's Presbyterian living, but not the cottages, just,
yeah.
that's just, correct.
Yeah, I mean, one of the because the county has a large number of seniors. I think the statistic is 25% of the county is over 60. In 5 years, 30% of the county is going to be over 60. So the demographics are definitely here. And I think it would be a good addition to the town.
How did you arrive at that's what's the thought process being?
So the number of units, that's a typical prototype of the 3 levels of care. So what you want to do is you want to have about 40% of independent living, 30% of assisted, and 20% of memory care, which is usually the way people fall into the 2 different categories. So it's very typical of what we see in other parts of the country. And it makes a nice balance between people who need to go in for care versus people who just want the extra help, want to sell their house, and also for spouses. And, you know, it allows spouses to be in different parts of the facility when their needs have changed.
So are there any skilled rooms in this?
There are no scales. So no Medicare, no Medicaid, it's all private pay.
And it is a fully taxable
Yeah.
operation.
Yes.
It's a rate.
Yes, it's a for-profit entity. Completely taxable, yes.
And I know Mr. Roth can talk about it, but just generally, this plan and our proposal allocates 245 parking spaces, which benefit of this facility, which you believe, based on your own experience and models like this, is still grossly overparked, right?
Is it me? Yes. Yeah, I mean, typically what we see is one parking space for independent unit, a half for assisted and memory care. So really, we would not need even 169 parking spaces for this. You know, unfortunately, there's not as many visitors as people would think. And it just, the parking always ends up being more than needed. So we're way over parked in this scenario.
Well, how much staff would they?
It's low, it's also lower than you think. So independent has no staff. So that's a pretty sizable chunk of the building. And then in the assisted living, you probably, if this were fully occupied, I would say on the day shift, which would be the heaviest shift, you probably have no more than 15 in the building.
I'm assuming there's food services.
Yeah,
for
there's food
the-
service. Yeah, I was thinking nursing. Well, in some situations, food service and care, you know, commingle. So they flip. But I think between this nursing staff and food service and say activities and administration, you're probably getting to maybe 22 to 23 during your high time. So that's about it.
That's just for assisted
That's for both assisted and memory care.
and memory.
Yeah. So only half of this, a little over half of this building is having services with staff. The rest independent really is alone.
And what about for maintenance or facilities people?
Usually one maintenance person. But it's a very low staffed level. And again, part of it's because it's not skilled, it's not a higher acuity, it's not, you know, you're not having IVs or, you know, oxygen, it's just helping with dressing, feeding, bathing, toileting.
Mark, we asked you to prepare an analysis of the different uses and parking needs, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
And we will mark as exhibit A4 a report that five,
The elevation is,
got it. Exhibit A5 is a report you could, as you hand it out or after we hand it out, talk a little bit about your background as a traffic consultant. What the assignment was that you prepared to share with.
Sure. A little bit more about my background.
I am a licensed professional engineer in Pennsylvania as well as New Jersey. I've been in the field of traffic engineering for over 30 years now. So I serve as a senior project manager for McMahon. So I've been with McMahon for over 27 years, doing traffic engineering. One of those items that fall under traffic engineering is parking analysis, parking evaluation studies. So I oversaw the preparation of this letter, which is marked exhibit 85.
Okay, we need to hand it out.
I actually thought the board had, I have one copy.
We don't have it.
No,
We don't have any of those.
no.
Well, no, we have two. That's it.
Right.
But I just whispered in Dave's ear that we're gonna need copies of all this stuff at some point. So if you only have one, that's fine. You can
Okay.
testify from it,
That's
but
my permit and then
yeah.
provide it later.
well, to
Give
David.
it tonight. Okay, Mark, why don't you talk about the nature of the assignment and what your report includes, and then the summary and.
Sure. I think what was testified to already, and what Mr. Conroy laid out, previous to this was the required parking for this type of the property itself, the entire property. So, one, we looked at the ordinance requirements and what was required for the entire lot combined, and what is being proposed with regards to the existing parking and anything proposed as part of the development. So what is required, if you add up everything that was talked about and Mr. Conroy mentioned, it was, according to our calculations, 907 parking spaces are required. And what's being proposed for the entire lot is 701 parking spaces. Okay, so 907 required, 701 proposed. Okay. The second part of our evaluation was to look at what we see across the country as part of the average demand. So what is demand for these types of uses? So what we use to do that is information available to us from the Institute of Transportation Engineers. And what that does is it provides parking demand based on studies across the country on similar type uses. So we looked at land.
Before you do that,
Yeah.
so there's a buzzword that we all use, that's the ITE,
That's correct.
Institute of Traffic Engineers, trip generation.
Your generation
Right.
manual, yes.
And that's a layperson, that manual breaks out different uses and identifies uses by a category, then calculates on either a square foot or some other basis what the parking demand should be for that use, and they arrive at that number. It's not based on southeastern Pennsylvania, northern New York, but on a nationwide average based on looking at those uses across the country, right?
That's correct. And I could add to that by saying that the studies that are used to generate the nationwide averages, some are within this area. So they take samples from throughout the whole country. And the East Coast is definitely a large sample of that.
Okay, so you've looked at the uses that we are proposing, i.e. the medical office building use, the allowable medical office use,
That's correct.
the assisted living facility.
That's correct.
And I think to get to that 900 number, you also included the A. Weber.
Correct. The general use building. And that would be fall under Jeff. Okay, so if I could, I'm gonna focus, I really want to focus on the proposed medical office as well as the proposed, what we're classifying as senior living facility. And based on the ITE parking generation, which I mentioned, the proposed medical office, they recommend, we see a demand of approximately 3.23 spaces per 1,000 square feet. of an office building for the medical office. The proposed size of the medical office is 30,000 square feet. So that calculates demand of 97. So it's a projected demand of 97 parking spaces. The proposed senior living, when we look at this and this kind of coincides with testimony that was just given with regards to what we see typically for this type of facility, basically suggests a 0.72 spaces per 1,000 square feet of gross floor area for the proposed senior living facility. That is the highest based on square footage. They really recommend a 0.4 per unit or occupied bed. So being conservative, we picked the higher of the two. That generates projected demand of 124 parking spaces. So if I look at the entire existing and proposed, what we see the demand being for this lot be roughly 427 parking spaces. So that's what the anticipated
And how
demand,
many are we fund?
proposing 700.
Not quite double, but
That's correct.
But that includes the A. Weber building and the existing shop building.
The 427 I just mentioned includes all four
And what use were you ascribed to the A. Weber? Just professional office?
general office.
general.
Yes. Obviously, the existing medical office was medical.
I got that part,
Sorry, it's funded by public.
but thank you.
So, the testimony that plan as presented, and I should also make it clear, this has yet, if we move beyond the stage, it has to then be engineered. We have not done a land development process. We have to still fully engineer the plan, Boulderwood engineer, go through the typical reviews by township consultants. And honestly, our effort would be to park in reserve some of the spaces if they truly aren't necessary. If we accept anywhere close to what Mr. Ross reported from the IT trip generation manuals are, the site remains grossly overparked. And one of our mandates from our discussions with the staff is to try to minimize or reduce impervious surface because of all that associated stormwater management and et cetera. So we would prefer, if we could, to identify in appropriate places where parking could be held in reserve and not installed unnecessarily, with the obligation on our part to install if we think it's needed or the township ultimately in the future determines we need to have additional parking. But a lot of the parking that you made reference to exists today. And there may be an opportunity, depending on how this gets laid out, to remove some of it, to create a buffer between the A. Weber building parking area and the assisted living facility, so that it's have a sea of parking. So that would be a topic that we would discuss during the land development stage, but our application in front of you would be to simply seek a reduction in the required spaces to those levels that we have specifically outlined in our application, even though even at those levels, we think that's probably grossly exaggerated in terms of the.
That's correct.
Mr. Roth, what was
Yeah.
that figure? 400, what was the number again? You said that you believe for IT that the whole site?
Demand 427.
Thank you.
So why not just in your plan present 427 or say 450 spaces instead of 701? Why if you think it sounds like you're almost like over developing. So why?
Probably not a great reason not to further reduce it. If the board was interested, we would certainly entertain it. I'm not sure everybody felt as comfortable as we did at something less than what we have shown. But we believe that it's still grossly overparked. It
Well-
probably doesn't.
Yeah, and by ordinance, Scott, they're required
Mhm.
to show 907
Yeah,
theoretically, so.
Right.
So, so the question you're actually asking is more of a planning one than a zoning one? Not that it's not a good question, because
Right,
it's,
it's-
Yeah, I'm just saying if we're looking at
my question
reducing
is,
pervious surface, each of them.
well, and I think that dovetails into the question I had from Mr. Harmon, if you know, the size of that basin, do you know what it was sized for?
I mean, in terms of impervious surface, I think, I mean,
Well, will you need to be doing underground, or do you think the basin's big enough?
but we believe that, I think that basin is already sized to handle a full build out.
Okay.
And as Mr. Murphy pointed out, I mean, regarding the parking, the only thing I would add is most of that parking is essentially there today. So we added some in a few spaces in a few areas, but essentially it's already there, and I think from a zoning perspective, get closer to the required number, even still weren't meeting it, but it's still well above the demand, let's say.
And all that parking now is macadam or blacktop?
It is. And I don't know if you guys know that that building has been vacant for
In a while,
5 years, maybe.
because our office is right off the road there, but that one's been vacant for a while.
And it's probably not likely to be occupied anytime soon, given the market of general office space. It's a shame, but that's gonna sit out there.
So I just want to clarify to make sure I'm understanding. You're proposing retaining the Weber building as it is.
We don't own that.
No, they don't.
Oh, okay, but your parking lot is shared or used by that.
That is, under the condominium regime, it is a limited common element and we have access to it, but
Okay,
we would like to not have. Want to avoid problems and in some fashion, landscaping. Separation between the Weber parking lot and our parking lot, so that. Allocation of maintenance responsibilities and the like. Can be
Good plan.
So we want to try to create a self-contained type of situation.
They also don't own the chop building.
Okay.
So the whole lot 4 is a convoluted condominium in a way,
Oh, yeah.
to say the least.
Somebody. With that is.
I'd like some of that. But yeah, so one of the questions, Mr. Hartman, I had is looking at an aerial of existing features, it looks like the vacant piece that comes right across from Andre Drive there is not wide enough. I didn't see an existing features, existing conditions plan. So I can't tell if actually some parking is getting taken out. If you follow what I'm saying?
Somewhat of a. And yes, the existing part extends up further, so the building is going to remove some of that.
That's the only conclusion I could come to. Because the pad just simply didn't look big enough. As I eyeballed it from the pad, okay, do you know how many spaces are coming out?
No.
All right, but Mr. Roth, the calculations you provided would be post-development, would be after those spaces are removed.
The 701 that I reported to, that would
Correct.
be, yes, that would be close to. Final plan, yes.
So theoretically, there's even more there.
There, yes,
Incorporates any required handicap spaces.
yeah.
So the only new spaces look to be along Schoolhouse Road. Is that correct?
Show TJ the colored version of the parks.
But that's not gonna help either because it doesn't have,
The side, right?
So,
he doesn't have an existing condition is what I'm saying.
Yeah, in a sense.
If you do, you haven't shown it to me.
so this version, there's some new spaces right in front of the building. Those are some ADA spaces. Everything else in the front is this. And there's some minor reconfiguring of some curb lines on the side, but the spaces on the right-hand side essentially exist. And then with the medical office portion. So,
We'll mark this too, TJ.
That'll be, that looks like a rendered sheet,
I know the winner.
that's sheet 3.
Okay,
so on this plan. The majority of this parking also exists, in the. Existing shop medical building is north of our proposed building. In the purple color is 50 spaces that exist with that building. There's parking that kind of goes in the fashion. The majority that are in existence. There's a handful, where we're gonna. I think it was planned for future parking. It's not constructed today. Some on the right-hand side, a few on this spot on the more on the other side, but the majority of that's already also constructed.
It kind of all begs the question of what use did they plan for that pad site if they built it, fully bid out the parking lot to what appears to be like over 1,000 spaces.
I think, I wasn't involved way back when, 15 plus years ago, but I think the original plan was all office. And it's just kind of evolved into different things for the whole New Britain, all the lots was there. I mean, how many office buildings, but it's
Right.
evolved into many different things.
I think, I was not involved with the PJ, but I think. Our proposed MOB building was a use that was contemplated. Originally. To be compatible with the CHOP.
Well, that one makes sense.
Right. That one.
I'm not
doesn't.
talking about that one. I'm talking about the bigger vacant piece, which clearly contemplated something that is going to be, was going to be more intensely parked than the nursing home facility.
To the, what I'll call original plan, which is probably at least 20 years. At this point. There was. I'm fairly certain it was all office.
Okay.
I don't know how many office buildings on lot 4, but there was a number of different ones.
But even though I think that's what doesn't resonate with me, is why in an office park you would allow a warehouse. That part escapes me, but
Was the, what's the parking, and I just don't know it off the top of my head, but for ordinance, per our ordinance, what's parking for office versus parking for the nursing home? I'm assuming it's more for the office.
No.
Do you know it off the top?
Not off the top of my head.
I believe the general office is 1 space per 2,000 square feet of total floor area. That's general office,
One for 200.
1 per 2.
Yeah, that sounds-
I'm sorry, 200. Yeah, thanks.
A lot of people would build it if it was 1 for 2,000.
so
That's
five,
5,000, 1 per 200.
that's general office,
That's general office.
5 per thousand.
And the,
Historically, that's been. 5 great.
But I
now
think,
what, if you want to equate that to, you want to equate that to like an assisted living?
well, I
Or do you want
want
to look at just ordinance, or do you
to,
want?
to the minimum use, I'm sorry, the minimum relief necessary. I mean, if you're, if you, what, to Mr. Murphy's point, you could have put a warehouse in there. I don't know what the warehouse parking requirements are. But medical office or any general office is probably proposed, we know, or allowed in there because it's there. And if that's 5 per 1,000, from what Ms. Doyle testified to, it's the actual needs for a C2 use are much less than 5 per 1,000. And I'm just trying to say, what is the corresponding? It's 1 per bed. What was it? 1.75 per bed?
Medical office. I'm looking at it right now, 1 space for 175 square feet for medical office, professional office, 1 for 200 square feet,
But then nursing homes measured by beds.
correct?
All right, well, before I'm not going down this rabbit hole any further. I just wanted to get testimony on the record that the parking for the allowed uses is probably more intense than what you're proposing, outside of the medical, because that's.
Yes, that would be pricey.
Okay, thank you.
Proposing to get 160 spots then for that parcel.
Yes.
Yes.
Is there any chance for reduction or or is that just what you need? Just the others, you said you have to build ordinance, but yet there's a chance you could build less, but is that all required for that as well?
There. I mean, it's something I'm sure that we could look at more during land development. Based on the data that I have available to me. On average calculated demand. We could reduce that, but not by much, maybe 10-15%.
Okay.
And still feel comfortable with demand.
Okay, if you-
Well, it's a bit, well, a bit close.
I have these bigger, I printed these bigger ones, you can see that. They might be easier to read. Yeah, I'm going to actually have the ones that I have. Then, are those big enough to see, guys?
Certainly bigger than my thumb.
You think?
It's fine.
I could scale it up. Looking at it.
Anything further?
I have no other questions.
I don't.
Can we go back and?
Sure.
We're gonna go off the record. Scribbles.
Had on the record. The fact that there is a nursing home across Andre Drive. We didn't hear any testimony on that. But we're also aware by looking at the zoning map, which is. De facto part of the record every time, that that's in a different zoning district. It appears to be in the OP zoning district. All right, let me ask Ms. Doyle. Doyle, are you aware of New Seasons across the street? Okay. Could you describe, if you know, what the New Seasons use is comprised of?
So. And the different. They don't have. It's smaller facility, it's a little outdated, it's. The purpose of it really is just for assisted living, so we felt, we always look at that anything when we talk about developing a building like this, whether or not that would be competition, but just given the nature of the fact that it's just one product type, we feel like this would be complementary to that versus.
It lacks the independent component and the
Right,
memory care unit? Okay, and it does not have any. It's all one whole building? I mean, there's no
Yes.
independent cottages or anything like that? Okay. But comparably speaking, it's in the same classification of use.
Yes,
It's
it would be.
So it's a nursing home use right across the street from where you want to go. Okay, thank you. We just wanted to make sure we got that through.
Think you have any closing statements? Very good. All right. We have a motion.
I would like to make a motion to the grant variances as requested with a recommendation to work with the township if possible to replace required parking spaces in reserve. With the intent to reduce parking impervious surface if possible.
Do I have a second?
I would second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good. Okay, you have release. You'll get a written decision within 45 days. Okay, good luck with the project.
Thank you.
Good to see you again.
Good luck.
Great.
Not too soon.
Too soon, right?
Make sure it's not a night there's a ball game. Like, and then the World Series. Yeah, we heard.
Because we were here. Gonna get blamed.
You're gonna get blamed.
It's gonna be some cranky people.
We'll blame Chuck.
I missed up the mojo.
Messed up the mojo.
Right seat.
Changed into.
Are we closed? David, are we closed and off the record? Are we closed? And are we introduced? Motion to adjourn?
That's one we did.
So moved.
Okay, we're
Yeah. Second.